Hey, what's up everybody? This is Berg501 and today I want to show you guys a level 57 flak build that allows you to do everything in the game on Mayhem 4, including the raid, pretty easily. And like my last 3 builds, this build is going to be using all level 50 items, but still allowing you to do everything on Mayhem 4 to try to help you guys get a build that's still able to do all that stuff on Mayhem 4, but do it much more easily without having to grind as much for items. So with that being said, we can go into the talents. Now this is an updated version of a build that I've done before that's pretty much designed around doing the raid and having a ridiculous amount of enemies to hit. But just because of how much damage Flak gets from his different talents and having more talent points, this build is still good for pretty much everything, and you can still farm majority of the bosses extremely quickly and pretty easily as well. So first off, we're going into the Hunter tree. Now this build is designed around using rocket launchers and pretty much doing really high burst damage and constantly going in and out of your action skill while constantly giving yourself ammo back. So first off, the Hunter tree, which a lot of the stuff in the Hunter tree is 100% needed to make this build work. Leave no trace. This is one of the important ones. When Flak scores a critical hit, there's a chance to have 1 ammo added to your magazine. So this is super good with a specific launcher we're using for most content, which is the lump. So we can add a ton of ammo back, and this will add it to your magazine, not just your overall, so you don't have to reload. 5 into Interplanetary Stalker, which is a stack and kill skill that gives damage, pet damage, and then damages to other targets depending on what it is. Now with the class mod we're using, which is the Bounty Hunter, you have a 3% chance to activate all your kill skills, or any kill skill, when dealing gun damage, and bosses are now considered all 3 of the different enemy types for Interplanetary Stalker, so that is a pretty big damage increase. 3 in the head count, this is super important. Whenever you score a critical hit, there's a chance to reduce your action skill cooldown, which is pretty big as well. And this is how we can constantly go back into our action skill and have it up super quickly. Then we went, I think, only 1 into Hunter's Eye because the points are better spent elsewhere. Even though we do get all these buffs on a boss, it's still better to spend them somewhere else. 2 Fang, this is super strong because we are using launchers, has a 25% chance to fire an additional projectile, which with a launcher, especially a lump, is a massive damage increase. The most dangerous game, another Hunter kill skill that gives gun damage, crit, pet damage, handling, and lasts a long time. And with our class mod, this will pretty much be up 100% of the time that we are in combat, so it's a pretty big damage increase. Galactic Shadow, critical hit damage increase, and enemies are less likely to attack you, which does help with your survivability a little bit. That's the weakest part of this build, is your survivability for the most part. Then Grim Harvest, Flak gains increased gun damage and action skill damage. Flak's pet gains increased damage, so pretty big damage and action skill damage increase and pet damage increase. Then Megavore, this is super important. Flak gains a chance to score a critical hit with weapons against any part of enemies. So this makes rocket launchers have a much higher chance of crit, especially lumps, which a lump basically creates 2 balls that have lines that connect to everything that deal really fast damage over time that can already crit, but with them being able to crit any spot, it also increases just the amount of times they crit, which will give you a lot of ammo back. For the pet we're using the Spider and Scorcher, which just regens your health 1% of your max health per second, which is pretty good. And then elemental damage plus 10%, which is the main reason we're using it. Now we're going into the Stalker tree, and with our new talent points, we can get a second capstone, which helps this build be much stronger, because I don't know if this build would be super good for doing level 57 stuff on Mayhem 4 with level 50 items like we're using without being able to get another capstone like this. So first, self-repairing systems, health regen, and max health increase makes your survivability a bit better. Furious attack, when you shoot enemies pretty much, you get gun damage, handling, pet damage, all pretty good. 4 into Eager to Impress, which is a kill skill that can reduce your action skill cooldown, mainly the reason we're using it, which helps us just get into our action skill faster and faster. Turn tail and run, when you're moving, you get health regen and damage reduction. When you're standing still, you gain gun damage and fire rate, which is all good for either, and you can control which one you want. Then we have Hidden Machine. When an enemy has no target or is attacking a different target, Flak deals increased 30% damage to them, and this is super good because we are using Fade Away, which makes us go stealth, so we'll get this quite a bit. Then we have the Fast and the Furious. While above half health, flat gun damage and movement speed are increased, and their pet damage gains increased damage as well, which is all really good, especially since if you're on boss fights, you're starting it in fadeaway, and with this buff already going, so it's much more bursty. And then when you're just doing, say, like the raid that's more long form, constantly fighting, when you go into your fadeaway with all the health regen we have and with the health regen we get from fadeaway, you're constantly getting tons of health regen, so you can get up to this really quickly and keep this for quite a bit of time when you're in fadeaway. Then the power inside, Flak and Flak's pet gain increased damage when Flak activates an action skill. If you're at full health, the damage is doubled, so 50% if it's doubled for 15 seconds, which is really good. Again, when you're doing boss fights, you'll get this active right away, which is a big damage increase. When you're doing more long form stuff, you're pretty much going to have this up all of the time. Some of the time you might not have it at full health, but you're still going to have a 25% or a 50% buff pretty much up all the time. And we're using fadeaway with until you are dead, which gives the health regen and movement speed of fadeaway. It persists for 10 seconds after it's done, which is very good for survivability. And then Unblinking Eye, successful hits on the same target, increase Flak critical damage per hit, and resets every 3 hits. This is super good, especially with the lump, because it constantly is doing tons of small crits, and then when it shoots the projectiles, it can crit, just increases the damage by quite a bit. The last points are into Persistent Hunter, which gives us gun damage and mainly action skill duration, which will help us be able to control when we need to shoot our shots from fadeaway, because we only have 3 shots from fadeaway, so we can just control that a little bit more. So that is all the talents, and now we can go into the items. So for the items, we already went over the class mod. Charge speed is very good because we are using mainly 2 weapons to charge, so that's good. Magazine size can be helpful, but not really that much. It can just be helpful if you get an extra round in the launcher you're using, because you have a much less of a chance of ever needing to reload. Weapon critical damage, also very good for this. Then one of the better shields for this are any amp shields. So we have the super version O.M, which pretty much is just the best amp shield in the game. And then when your shield breaks, it drops a amp field below you that also has amp on your shots. And for your shield and grenade mod anointeds, just get any on action skill end, you deal bonus elemental damage. This is activated a lot with this build, so it's pretty important to have these. Make sure it's not the same element on shield and grenade mod because they don't stack. For our artifact, I'm using a flesh melter which stacks up corrosive damage. Now this mainly when I'm doing the raid and stuff like that, I'll use a corrosive launcher, and stacking this up just gives you more damage than if you were using the best element against whatever you're fighting. So this is overall good. Victory rush on it, pretty good. The secondary rolls, pretty much any good thing you can get. Action skill cooldown rate, pretty decent. Incendiary damage, good. Radiation damage, all can be pretty good if you're using those, especially with the elemental damage on the shield and the grading mod. And if you're going single target, if you can, pretty much the only other good thing for damage is the artifact that you get at the end of DLC 2 from Claptrap. I forget the name of it right now, but it's a really good damage increaser. But I'm not using any level 57 items or higher than level 50 items for this build, so I didn't switch to that at all. But if you're just playing the game, I'd recommend getting that and using that for boss fights. Now the weapons we're mainly using are lumps, which are super good. Try to get a ×2. There's not really that good of anointeds for this build that are specifically for Flak. If you have any of the anointeds that are general ones, like on action skill end, so you deal 75% bonus radiation damage right there. There's one that's on action skill end, you deal extra damage or bonus elemental damage with your next 2 magazines, or you just deal increased damage. Any of that stuff is going to be good. I don't have any anointed on either of my weapons, just showing how much better this build can actually be. In the lump, you can still use on bosses as I show in the footage. It's not going to be near as strong as using an ion cannon like I am, but lumps are pretty much what this build is designed around. It's still going to be good for bursting down bosses quickly, but for more long form combat, slaughter shaft, the raid, anything like that, you're going to want to use a lump because of getting that ammo back, because it crits so much, hits everything super hard after it crits a bunch from the lines. So you're getting tons of ammo back, you're getting tons of crits, which then make your cooldown shorter, so then you can go back into it, deal more damage. All super good, synergizes really well. And then like I said, for bosses, I would recommend using an ion cannon that's ×2. These things still absolutely shred, and if you're fighting majority of the bosses in the game, if they don't have immunities, you can pretty much one-shot a lot of them, and if they are using immunities, you can just shoot one shot and usually get them into that immunity. So that is also all of the items we are using. So that is the entirety of the build. Like I said with all my previous builds, now that we are done with all of these builds using level 50 items, I'm going to start builds using all level 57 pieces, using a much stronger build, using some new DLC 2 items and stuff like that to try to see how good and how strong we can actually get some of these builds. So subscribe if you want to see more Borderlands 3 content. Leave a like if you liked the video. video. Leave a comment down below what you guys think about this build, and thanks for watching.
Yes, into the fray! They'll never see me coming. Pathetic end for a pathetic creature. Feel the bloodlust! Ready for a fight?
bleeding! Honor me!
Accelerating!
It's my moment!
Those are advanced mechs, but we're after something bigger. Keep going.